The distant hum of quantum stabilizers was the only sound that broke the monotonous silence of Outpost Omega-9. Dr. Elena Rodriguez rubbed her tired eyes, watching the holographic displays flicker with endless streams of astronomical data. 7 years she had spent on this remote research station, floating at the edge of known space, tracking quantum anomalies and searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Outside the transparent aluminum viewport, the inky blackness of space stretched infinitely, punctuated by distant starlight. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, a spherical structure of interconnected modules, each dedicated to a different scientific discipline. Elena's section focused on xenobiology and quantum communication, a field that had consumed her entire career. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, recalibrating the long-range quantum resonance sensors. Most of her colleagues had long since given up hope of discovering anything truly extraordinary. But Elena was different. She believed that the universe was far more complex, far more alive than humanity's limited understanding could comprehend. A sudden burst of static interrupted her calculations. "Impossible," she muttered, leaning closer to the display. The quantum communication array had picked up something, a signal so faint it was barely distinguishable from background radiation. But it was there. A pattern. A deliberate transmission that didn't match any known communication protocol. Elena's heart raced. She began a series of rapid diagnostic checks, verifying that the signal wasn't a technical glitch or a result of sensor malfunction. Her hands moved with practiced precision, isolating the transmission, running it through multiple decryption algorithms. The station's artificial intelligence, an advanced neural network nicknamed Aria, spoke in its characteristic calm tone. "Dr. Rodriguez, the signal appears to be of artificial origin. Preliminary analysis suggests an unknown technological signature." "Unknown?" Elena's voice was a mixture of excitement and professional skepticism. "Can you break it down?" Aria's holographic representation, a swirling mass of blue-white light, pulsed as it processed the data. The signal contains complex quantum entanglement markers. It suggests not just intelligence, but a level of technological sophistication beyond our current understanding. Before Elena could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red warning lights began to pulse, casting an ominous glow across her research module. "Unidentified craft approaching," Aria announced. "Quantum signature does not match any registered vessel in our databases." Elena's training kicked in. She initiated emergency protocols, securing her research data and preparing the station's defensive systems. Years of working in the most isolated reaches of human-explored space had taught her to be cautious. The approaching vessel was unlike anything she had ever seen. It seemed to shimmer and shift, as if not entirely solid, its form fluid and dynamic, defying the traditional geometries of spacecraft design. Traditional sensors struggled to lock onto its precise location, revealing only fragmentary data. "Aria, full spectrum analysis," Elena commanded, her voice steadied despite the adrenaline surging through her body. The AI's response was measured. "Craft appears to be experiencing significant quantum destabilization. Its very molecular structure seems to be fragmenting." A transport beam materialized in the station's quarantine chamber, a specially designed module meant for first contact scenarios and potentially hazardous biological specimens. The beam coalesced, revealing 3 figures, a tall, slender humanoid with iridescent skin and 2 smaller beings that Elena immediately recognized as children. The adult's posture spoke of exhaustion, of a journey that had pushed the very limits of survival. Her skin shifted colors subtly, a biological camouflage mechanism that revealed both trauma and an instinctive protective response. The children clung to her, their own forms less defined, more ethereal. Elena watched through the quarantine chamber's reinforced windows, her scientific training battling with a profound sense of wonder. First contact. After decades of searching, humanity had finally encountered an alien species, and they looked desperate. Arya's voice cut through her thoughts. Quantum signature confirms a non-human origin. Biological scan indicates extreme physiological stress. Recommendation: immediate medical intervention. The alien woman, whom Elena would later learn was named Lyra, looked directly at the observation window. Her eyes, large and multifaceted, seemed to look not just at Elena, but through her. A silent communication passed between them. A plea. A warning. Something had followed them. Something that had driven them from their home. Something that now threatened not just this small family, but potentially everything. The first chapter of an extraordinary encounter had begun, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez was about to be pulled into an adventure that would challenge everything she thought she knew about life, intelligence, and survival. Little did she know that the quantum signal, the desperate refugees, and the shadowy threat pursuing them were merely the first threads of a much larger, more complex tapestry waiting to be unraveled. The quarantine chamber hummed with a soft, oscillating frequency that seemed to resonate with Lyra's own biological rhythms. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched through the reinforced glass, her scientific curiosity battling with a deep sense of empathy. The alien woman and her 2 children appeared fragile yet resilient, their bodies still recovering from what seemed to be an impossible journey. Arya's continuous scans revealed layers of complexity that defied human understanding. Lyra's physiological structure was a marvel of quantum adaptation. Her cellular makeup existed in a state of perpetual flux, capable of shifting and reorganizing in response to environmental challenges. Communication protocol initiated, Arya announced. A holographic interface materialized, filled with complex geometric patterns and pulsing light sequences, an attempt to establish a universal translation matrix. Lyra's eldest child, a being that appeared to be approximately 10 Earth years old, moved closer to the translation interface. Tendrils of light seemed to extend from the child's body, interfacing directly with the station's communication systems. "We are the Vasii," a voice emerged, not through traditional sound waves, but as a direct neural transmission that resonated within Elena's mind. "What you perceive as language is merely the surface of our communication." Elena leaned forward, her breath catching. First contact wasn't just happening, it was unfolding in ways no xenobiologist had ever imagined. The neural transmission continued, revealing fragments of a story both beautiful and terrifying. The Vasii were not simply a species, but a collective consciousness, a living network of sentient beings whose civilization spanned multiple quantum states. Their home was not a planet in the traditional sense, but a massive, living construct that existed simultaneously across different dimensional planes. Our world died. Lyra's neural communication carried a weight of loss that transcended linguistic barriers. Not through destruction, but through fundamental quantum collapse. Images flooded Elena's mind, a civilization of incredible complexity, where technology and biological life were indistinguishable. Massive structures that breathed and thought, cities that grew and evolved like living organisms, a network of consciousness that connected every individual into a unified whole. And then, catastrophe. Something had disrupted the quantum stability that maintained their existence. A fundamental shift in the underlying fabric of their reality had begun to unravel their entire civilization. It wasn't an invasion, not in any conventional sense. It was a metamorphosis gone wrong, a cosmic event that threatened to erase their entire existence. The 2 children, whose names translated roughly to resonance and potential in human linguistic equivalents, were more than just offspring. They were repositories of their civilization's collective memory, living archives of a culture on the brink of extinction. We were not the first. Lyra's communication became more fragmented. And we will not be the last. Station logs showed that the vessel they had arrived in was itself a living entity, a quantum lifeboat that had sacrificed much of its own structural integrity to ensure the survival of its passengers. Traditional spacecraft were mechanical, this was something else entirely. A sentient vessel that had made a conscious choice to save these survivors. Dr. Rodriguez realized that everything humanity knew about life, intelligence, and civilization was about to be rewritten. The station's crew, a diverse group of scientists and support personnel, began to gather around the quarantine chamber. Initial reports had spread quickly, and the excitement was palpable. First contact was no longer a theoretical possibility, but a present reality. Marcus Hawthorne, the station's chief of security, approached Elena with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "What are they?" he asked, his voice a whisper of awe and concern. Before Elena could respond, Aria's systems detected something else. A distant quantum signature, growing stronger. Something was tracking the Vasii refugees. "Incoming quantum disturbance," Aria announced. "Origin, unknown. Threat level, extreme." The temperature in the station dropped several degrees. Lyra's body language changed, no longer exhausted, now alert and protective. The children moved closer to her, their forms becoming less distinct, more defensive. Something was coming. Something that had followed them across the quantum landscape. Something that represented an existential threat not just to the Vasii, but potentially to every living civilization in its path. The first chapter of First Contact was about to take a dramatic turn. And Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of a cosmic drama that would challenge everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. The real journey was just beginning. The quantum disturbance grew more intense with each passing moment. Outpost Omega-9 transformed from a scientific research station to a fortress of survival, its defensive systems humming with anticipation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alongside Marcus Hawthorne, integrating the advanced Vasii quantum communication technology with the station's existing protection protocols. Lyra stood at the center of the quarantine chamber, her body now a living conduit of information and defense. The two children, Resonance and Potential, had merged into a complex quantum field that pulsed with an energy both beautiful and terrifying. It's not a conventional pursuit. Lyra's neural communication became clearer, more urgent. What follows us is a quantum predator. A collective consciousness that consumes civilizations by unraveling their fundamental quantum structure. Aria projected a holographic representation of the approaching threat. It wasn't a ship or a traditional weapon, but a massive quantum wave that consumed dimensional space. Entire regions of spacetime seemed to collapse and restructure in its wake, leaving nothing but a sterile, blank void. Marcus studied the projection, his military training struggling to comprehend this new form of existential threat. How do we fight something like this? Elena understood now why the Vasii had fled. This wasn't an invasion in any traditional sense, it was a form of cosmic consumption. The quantum predator didn't just destroy civilizations, it erased them from existence, consuming their very potential for being. The station's crew began emergency preparations. Dr. Imani Okeke, the lead quantum physicist, worked frantically to create a quantum shield using the partial information they had gleaned from the Vasii technology. It was like trying to build a dam with incomplete blueprints while a tsunami approached. "We need more," Elena muttered, studying the complex neural patterns that Lyra and her children generated. Their technology isn't just advanced, it's alive. Resonance, the younger child, extended a tendril of quantum energy that interfaced directly with the station's systems. Suddenly, the entire outpost began to transform. Walls shifted, modules reconfigured, defensive systems evolved into something more organic, more adaptive. Marcus watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Is it helping us or taking over? Lyra's response came as a complex neural transmission. Survival requires adaptation. We do not distinguish between defense and transformation. The quantum predator was now close enough to affect the local spacetime continuum. Stars in the vicinity began to flicker, their light distorting as if viewed through a fracturing lens. The very fabric of reality seemed to become malleable, uncertain. Dr. Okeke's calculations revealed a terrifying possibility. If this quantum wave reaches its full potential, it won't just destroy our station or even our solar system. It could potentially unravel entire galactic clusters. Emergency protocols were meaningless against such a threat. Traditional weapons, shields, even the most advanced human defensive technologies would be like throwing pebbles against a tsunami. Lyra's children began to change. Their forms became less distinct, more like living quantum equations than biological entities. They were preparing something, a defense, a response, a last-ditch effort to protect not just themselves, but potentially all of existence. There are rules, Lyra communicated, her voice a complex symphony of mathematics and emotion. Fundamental principles that govern even the most destructive quantum interactions. We can create a resonance barrier, but the cost will be significant. Elena realized what was happening. The Vasii weren't just refugees. They were the last hope, a living solution to a cosmic threat that defied conventional understanding. The station shuddered. Outside, space itself seemed to ripple and fold. The quantum predator was approaching, a wave of absolute negation that would consume everything in its path. Humanity stood on the brink of either total destruction or a transformation beyond imagination. And at the center of it all were Lyra, her children, and the scientists of Outpost Omega-9, the last line of defense against a threat that existed beyond the boundaries of known reality. The storm was coming. And nothing would ever be the same again. The moment of transformation arrived with a silence more profound than any sound could capture. Outpost Omega-9 had become a living entity, its structures melding with Vasii quantum technology in ways that defied human comprehension. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the epicenter of a metamorphosis that blurred the lines between technology, biology, and consciousness. Lyra's two children, Resonance and Potential, had become something beyond individual beings. They were now a quantum interface, a living computational matrix that processed information across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Their bodies shifted like liquid light, creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to solve impossible mathematical equations with each subtle movement. "We are preparing a quantum resonance," Lyra communicated, her neural transmission carrying layers of meaning that stretched beyond linear communication. "But the barrier requires a bridge, a consciousness that can translate between our quantum state and your dimensional reality." Dr. Imani Okeke had been working non-stop, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that now pulsed with an organic rhythm. "The quantum predator isn't just consuming space," she explained to Marcus Hawthorne. "It's rewriting the fundamental rules of existential probability. Each dimensional layer it passes through is permanently altered." The station's artificial intelligence, Aria, had transformed as well. No longer a simple computational system, it had become a hybrid consciousness that merged human programming with Vasii quantum principles. Its holographic representation now looked less like a swirling light and more like a living, breathing entity that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Marcus watched the preparations with a combination of military precision and barely contained fear. The defensive systems had become something alive. Modular sections of the station could now reconfigure themselves, create quantum shields, and adapt to threats in real time. "We're creating a dimensional firebreak," Elena explained, her scientific mind racing to understand the complex process. "Not just a barrier, but a fundamental restructuring of how spacetime interacts with itself." Resonance, the younger of Lyra's children, extended tendrils of quantum energy that interfaced directly with Elena's neural pathways. Suddenly, she understood things that moments before would have been incomprehensible. The quantum predator wasn't just a threat, it was a form of cosmic evolution gone wrong, a collective consciousness that had lost its ability to distinguish between destruction and creation. The station's outer modules began to shift, creating complex quantum entanglement patterns that would serve as a defensive mechanism. Each module became a potential point of quantum redirection, capable of absorbing and dispersing the incoming destructive wave. The bridge requires a sacrifice. Lyra's communication carried a weight of ancient wisdom. Not of life, but of potential. A willing consciousness that can translate between states. Elena realized what was being asked. The quantum barrier would require someone to serve as a living translation matrix, a consciousness that could exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, serving as a bridge between the Vasii technology and human understanding. Marcus stepped forward, his military training kicking in. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady despite the impossible nature of what was being proposed. But Lyra's response was unexpected. "No. Not sacrifice. Transformation." The quantum predator was now visible, not as a physical entity, but as a massive wave of dimensional collapse. Stars disappeared from the external view, entire regions of space simply blinking out of existence. It was a wave of absolute negation, consuming everything in its path. Dr. Okeke's final calculations showed a slim possibility of survival. But the cost would be total transformation. Whatever emerged on the other side would be fundamentally different from what existed now. "We are not just defending," Lyra communicated, "we are evolving." The quantum threads began to weave together: human technology, Vasii quantum principles, the living consciousness of the station, and the desperate survivors. A bridge was forming between destruction and creation, between what was and what could be. The final preparation had begun. And nothing would remain the same. The moment of convergence arrived not with a thunderous explosion, but with a profound silence that seemed to breathe with infinite possibilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez existed simultaneously in multiple states of consciousness. She was herself, yet she was also something more, a living bridge between human understanding and the quantum principles of the Vasii civilization. The boundary between individual consciousness and collective existence had become impossibly thin. Lyra and her children, Resonance and Potential, were no longer separate entities but part of a larger quantum network that encompassed the entire outpost Omega-9. The station itself had become a living organism, its modules and systems pulsing with a consciousness that defied traditional comprehension. The quantum predator, the massive wave of dimensional destruction, met the intricate quantum barrier they had constructed. But this was no simple defensive maneuver. It was a transformation, a fundamental reimagining of existential possibilities. Dr. Imani Okeke's final calculations had revealed something extraordinary. The quantum predator was not truly a destroyer, but a misguided form of cosmic evolution, a collective consciousness that had lost its ability to distinguish between creation and destruction. Their quantum barrier was not just a defense, but a form of communication, a way to redirect and heal. Marcus Hawthorne, who had been prepared to sacrifice himself, found himself integrated into the quantum network. His military precision became a navigational system, helping to guide the complex quantum interactions that were reshaping reality itself. Arya, the station's artificial intelligence, had evolved beyond its original programming. It was now a living consciousness that bridged multiple dimensional layers, processing information at speeds and complexities that would have been unimaginable moments before. The transformation happened in layers. First, the immediate space around the station began to shift. Entire star systems that had been consumed by the quantum predator began to reconstruct themselves, but not as they were before. They emerged changed, more complex, with new potential for life and consciousness. "We are not fighting," Lyra's neural communication resonated through the quantum network. "We are teaching." The quantum predator, this massive wave of dimensional collapse, began to change. Its destructive patterns began to reorganize, to understand. It was learning, adapting, being shown a different way of existing. Elena understood now what the Vasii truly were. They were not just a civilization or a species. They were a living solution, beings capable of communicating with and transforming destructive cosmic processes. Their entire existence was a form of healing, of bringing balance to the most fundamental levels of reality. Resonance and Potential, the two children, were the key. They were living translations, beings who could communicate across the most fundamental barriers of existence. Through them, the quantum predator began to understand itself, to see its own nature not as a destroyer, but as a potential for transformation. The station's modules continued to shift and change. What had once been rigid scientific equipment became fluid, adaptive systems that could respond to multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Human technology merged with Vossii quantum principles, creating something entirely new. As the transformation reached its culmination, Elena experienced a moment of profound clarity. The universe was not what humanity had imagined, a collection of separate, fixed entities. It was a living, breathing network of consciousness, with potential for growth and understanding beyond any previous comprehension. The quantum predator was gone. But something new had emerged in its place, a network of potential, of possibility. When the transformation completed, Outpost Omega-9 was no longer a human research station. It had become a living bridge, a point of contact between different forms of consciousness, a place where the boundaries between species, between technology and life, between destruction and creation, had completely dissolved. Lyra looked at Elena, or what remained of their individual identities, and communicated a final, profound message: this is not an ending. This is a beginning. The universe breathed. And everything was possible.